Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
All right, here we are on another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies.
Yeah.
This one's going to go in the records, Pete. This one's going to go in the records. Episode number 241 is supposed to be about... here we go. It's supposed to be about Congress stimulus package skills for real estate rookies to get gargantuan creative profits.
Oh, that'd be good, Bill. That'd be good.
Yeah,
that's a little different. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm paying attention to text. So here's what's going on. This is the live scene in the bunker. We're supposed to have Kevin Perro, which I'm going to read the description in a moment, which is not exactly what's going to happen, but I'm going to continue on with the show anyways. But to my demise, I was told that my financial advisor didn't have compliance from his office to be able to speak freely to me on a podcast.
Boy, they must have some special secret stuff there that they got to be careful.
So we're going to go on with the show without Mr. Perro, evidently. So I'm not sure how this is going to go. But here we go.
Yeah, sure.
Here's the description. If you are anything like me, you might be wondering how all this Congress stimulus package stuff is going to affect me or you buying creative real estate deals when and if it's going to ever happen. We still don't know that it's going to happen, which is why I needed to call in a financial pro. So much for that. So we can get his opinion on the stimulus package and our opinion on the real estate portion, which means you should expect to get some amazing jewels on how to accurately operate during these totally weird but opportunistic times never really experienced in history. Remember, the most amount of money is made, ever made, in times of chaos. And we have a lot of chaos right now. Which means you need to stop hearing all the noise and concentrate or focus on what will get you immediate and best results. And listening to conversations like this in this podcast episode can help you keep your eye on the mountain that will be your future's freedom financially and every other way you decide. So make sure you listen with clear mind and don't let your opinions block the information until the call is over. Good morning, Desiree. So, here we go. The most unusual podcast. This is like the beginning, Pete, when we used to just get on here and just talk.
Right. Yeah. I really had no
plan,
idea then.
Right?
And you didn't either.
Right. Yeah. So, but I got some data, and we're going to cover that. And I don't know how long we'll go today. Maybe today will be the shortest podcast known for a year, right? Maybe it'll be the longest. But here we go.
Okay.
So, with the new president and his team trying to pass a $1.9 trillion stimulus package, I wanted to chat today with like, well, how is this going to affect things?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting thing about that $1.9 trillion is, from what I understand from my accountant, or from an accountant, the CPA in my 6 Degrees networking group, okay, he says they haven't even spent the package they passed already. They're still having trouble spending the money that Trump passed back in December of 2020. They haven't even spent that money yet. And although it looks like the table is slanted a bit to the conservatives, because it seems Senator Christine Semino, I don't even know how to say her name, Sinema, Let's do it that way. I know them by the states. It's the Arizona congressperson.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know who that
senator.
is.
The Arizona senator,
Yeah.
and the West Virginia senator, which is Joe Manchin, or Manchin. All right? These are two Democrats, right?
Yeah.
That are not in favor of the $15 an hour wage thing.
Right.
So the way it's supposed to work is they think that the House would be partisan, which means they would vote their party.
Yeah.
Right? So if they're Republican, they would vote Republican, and they think that it would be a 50-50 vote. In that case, Vice President Kamala Harris, or whatever her name is. Yeah, Kamala. Is it Kamala or Kamala?
Well,
it's Harris. I know her last name, Harris.
It's Kamala or Kamala. She says it both ways herself. Kamala.
Okay. So Kamala Harris would actually be the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
And that's what their expectations are. But in the background, we have these two senators, the one from Arizona and the one from West Virginia, saying that they don't absolutely agree with the entire bill.
Well, that would make sense, because if you try to force a $15, imagine $15 in West Virginia, totally different than $15 in Los Angeles or New York. That's probably $100 in West Virginia. You know,
here's the thing, Peter.
Things.
Listen to yourself talking.
Oh, I don't listen to me. Are you kidding?
Listen to yourself talking, because you are talking like an American. You're talking like the herd. Are you ready for this? I'm going to drop the bomb on you right now.
Go ahead.
The $15 an hour minimum wage is for federal employees only. It's not the entire country. Swear to God.
Oh, well, that's what's in the bill, because they've been talking about it for everybody, you know, McDonald's and all that. But in the bill, it's only for federal.
In the bill, it's for federal employees only.
Well, what federal employees make less than $15? You're working for the government. Who makes less than 15?
I don't know.
I don't think everybody makes less than 15 if you're working for the government. It's the whole point. You got me a government job. I'm all set for life now. No offense to anybody.
So, Pete, this is pretty interesting. So, Phil just said, "Good morning, boys." But I think this is pretty cool. You're going to enjoy this. His name is Phil Collins.
Oh, but he spelled it wrong. Hey, Phil. Where's Phil from?
I don't know. Anyways, I think that's pretty. I thought you would enjoy that.
Sure.
Anyways, so that's what I'm talking about in this stimulus package. Well, first of all, prior to me doing this show, because it's a little bit. He said, "Can you feel it?"
Yeah. I can feel it in the air tonight.
Anyways, so I decided that, you know, I'm not pretending to be like some really like connected. I'm not like a Rush Limbaugh where I have all these. He says he's from PA, coaching client. Ha ha ha. Ah. So that's our regular Phil. That's who it is.
Okay.
So, anyways, what happens is I'm not pretending to be like, you know, like Rush Limbaugh or something like that. Like I have all these, you know, insights about it, but I do have some theories, and I do have my life, which I talk to a lot of people. I mean, I talk to thousands of people a week, usually, you know, by email, by this podcast, by support tickets, all that kind of stuff. So I do feel like I have the advantage of having at least some common knowledge, right?
Yeah.
These are just my opinions. They aren't like, you know, steadfast or anything like that. But the first thing I want to bring up is that I went onto Google and I tried to research, and I spent probably 2 or 3 hours looking for data, not knowing that this was going to happen, just so I had some intelligent things to talk about when Kevin was with us, right? Oh my God, they're full of energy this morning. So Topher says, "I love your knowledge, Bill and Pete. Keep sprinkling in the national topics coming from PA." You're welcome.
Topher, that's the second time I heard that name. I have a student that's named Topher, because he wanted to be called Christopher, and everybody kept saying Chris, and he would correct them, Topher, Chris, Topher, Chris, Topher, and they finally called him Topher. Short for Chris, Topher.
Maybe it's the same guy. So anyways, here's the deal. Okay. So I was doing all this research, and Well, I wasn't doing research. That's the point that I'm making. So first of all, the narrative was coming mostly from CNN.
About the bill.
All right. About the only information that's been being released about the bill, they call it the relief package.
Yeah.
Right. Was coming from CNN. There is very little. I was on YouTube. I was on Google. It's like this most obvious secret to all of us. And not to be a conspiracist, but it's like, so we're about ready to. Desiree says CNN is corrupt. I agree. So we're about to enter $1.2 trillion.
1.9.
I'm sorry. Well, it's 1.2 to 1.9. That's what the thing
there's a
is.
spread
Right?
now? All right.
Yeah, so we'll say 1.2 to 1.9 trillion dollars. Right? This is no different than my wife going to the furniture store and spending 20 grand and not telling me. And then sending me the bill. Or buying a $500,000 house and signing me up for the mortgage. That's how I feel about this.
Well, Bill, it's not surprising that you can't find much information about it. You think the senators and the congressmen and women know what's in the package?
No.
These things, I have some friends who work in the state, locally, and one of them was an interpreter for bills for the Congress and senators and politicians. They can't read this stuff. They read as much as they can, then they tell them what it says.
They read the summaries.
And
so that's like playing telephone, isn't it? We talked about that in the last episode, right? That's like playing telephone, right?
Yeah, but it's the whole telephone book.
Yeah, but when you play telephone, you whisper in somebody's ear, and by the time it gets around to the other person, it's a whole different thing, right? So, so the person that's giving the summary, how do we know that they don't have misunderstandings, first of all? Second of all, their opinion wasn't injected. And third of all, it's not firsthand information. So basically, our congressmen that are the legislators, as they call, they're carrying for the fathers, our father, what do they call them?
Founding fathers?
Founding fathers, founding fathers' wishes on verbal data.
Yeah.
They're not even reading it.
Yeah, because you can't.
Okay.
You can't.
So what they're trying to pass is they're trying to pass that each American gets $1,400 per person, $5,600 for a family of 4, with individuals making less than $100,000 and families making less than $200,000. So if you have a family of 4 and you make less than $200,000, you get $5,600.
Yeah.
If you're an individual and you make less than $100,000, then you get $1,400.
Yep.
So the first thing I ask is, no disrespect, but what does $1,400 do? I mean, that might pay somebody's rent, but barely. I mean, I have tenants that live in 2-bedroom apartments that pay $1,000, $1,200.
Yep.
Right? So that's like 1 month.
Yeah.
Right? So it's going to need to come to a quick response pretty soon, because the December's $900 billion relief package, okay? So $900 billion is not that far from $1 trillion. So we're talking about almost $3 trillion total.
Yeah.
Right? But anyways, the $900 billion package that was done in, hang on, excuse me, that was done in December. My goodness, I don't know where that came from. They haven't spent that money yet. They're still trying to spend that money.
It's a lot of money. Right? It's not easy to spend that much money. You think you can, but it's a lot of money.
Right. So, let's just talk about the logistics of this for a second. Now, this is going to come from
Bill's laughing at a text that somebody sent. What did they say? You're allergic to bullshit. Thanks, Desiree.
That's why you sneezed.
Yeah, okay. Ooh.
Oh, my goodness.
Bill, this morning is going to hell.
That was good, Desiree.
I think we should just continue without Kevin today, but with all our listeners, and between all of us, we'll pull off the show.
There you go.
That's what's happening.
So let's go back to some of our roots here in the United States, okay? And I promise to make this full circle, but the book is called The Creature from Jekyll Island, right? So basically, now if you go Google that, you'll find many videos. The author of that book was just recently, a year or two, just interviewed, which was an amazing interview because of the research that he did. But basically, you need to read that story. And the reason why is because in short version, here's what happened, okay? And I'm going to put my own spin on this so that we can get the concept of what's coming in front of us and how this relates to real estate. Okay, so I'm just going to go off on my own. I'm not on script or anything like that. I'm just going to go off like you and I talk. This is how we talk when we're together, right?
Yep.
So basically, before time began, okay, back in, let's say the Wild Wild West or whatever, what happened was there was a blacksmith in a town. And every town there was a blacksmith, mostly because of the horseshoes that had to be made, but there was a blacksmith.
Right.
So a blacksmith had a safe. Most of them had a safe. So after a while, what would happen is people would bring their valuables and put them in the safe to store them, right?
Yeah.
Mostly because of fire, but their valuables, like their documents or, their deeds or whatever, and they would store them in this safe, right?
That include their gold and silver and jewelry too?
Whatever. But they put their valuables there, whatever their valuables were. This was the very beginning of the banking business. So what was noted from that activity of however many years that was, because it didn't mention how many years.
I think I've heard something like 400 back in Europe, something like that.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I don't remember. But there was a lot of time period where this happened. What was noted is that only 10% of the depositors, in other words, the people that put things in the safe, only about 10% came back at any given time to remove or add their stuff.
Yeah.
So that set off the banking industry. So now banking kind of starts and they kind of run off of this rule that only about 10% of the depositors will come and get their money or take their money or give money. Right? So that meant the other 90% could be used for something else.
Yep.
Or could be, it wasn't used. In the beginning, it just wasn't used.
Right.
So the banker got clever and realized that when it finally became money and not just some people's valuables, because you have to realize that money itself really didn't develop until our forefathers created the Constitution. Because prior to that, our Constitution says the only money that we can have is metal money. We can't, we're not supposed to have paper money.
That is so weird. I've heard you say that a few times, but you never hear that kind of thing.
Right.
We got paper all over the place.
Right. So
Crazy.
essentially what happens is these banks start developing, in their own territories and their own zones and all that kind of stuff, right? So what happens is, which by the way, just in case you're curious, going on to Bill's planet, this is where my idea originally started, that investors are a bunch of individuals not organized. Where realtors, they may not be the best system, but they have an association or an organization. They have rules, they have a code of ethics, they have licenses, they have certificates, they're organized.
Right.
Which is why they are what they are. Investors are not organized like that. Well, it occurred to me when I read this many years ago that the banks were the same way. They were not organized. There was not like a code of ethics. The banker could say, instead of lending a 10-to-1 ratio, he could lend an 8-to-1 ratio, meaning that he would lend, instead of lending 90% of his money, he would lend 96% of his money, or 95% of his money. And what always happened is if the rule is, it's a kind of a law, a natural law, is if they lend more than 90% of the money, they can't handle the deposits. And what happens is when things get a little bit shaky, what happens? Everybody runs to the bank and tries to get their money out, and they only have 10% of the money because they lent the rest of it out. That's the Depression.
Just like the movie with James Stewart, It's a Wonderful Life, when somebody gets a little nervous, they all want their money back, and he doesn't have the money. He lend it to some guy to build a house, another guy to put money into his business, and that's like the whole point of it. You don't just go get your money out. It's not sitting there. They lend it to make money to pay the bills and the secretary and the lights and the electricity and make profit or whatever else they do with it.
Well, the only way that a bank could make money, they don't make money with money. That's a myth. You don't make money with money, although indirectly you do. The way that banks make their money is with fees, servicing the money, in other words, managing the money, and interest. So that's why you see mortgages get sold. They're not really selling the mortgage. What they're doing is they're passing off the management and they're getting the fees. So what happens is the banks get these notes once they have the debt. Okay? Once they have the debt has to be serviced, and that's where all the bank's money is servicing the debt. It's not just in the interest, it's in servicing the debt. Okay? So here's my point. So years go down. So the early 1900s, what was happening is a lot of these smaller banks were over leveraging their 10% rule. And they would collapse. And they would go bankrupt. And they would steal people's money without stealing people's money. So a few bankers, like the Childs from Europe, or
Rothschild?
Rothschild.
Rothschild.
You had
Morgan
Chase, Rockefeller. These type of guys with this big money decided they were getting a bad rap. Right? They were getting a bad reputation because all these little banks were closing down and giving the banking business a bad rap. So I'm not sure the exact date. I think it was in the, I'm not sure of the date. It was in the early 1900s. I think it was 1918 or something like that. They decided to have a secret meeting, and they pulled together all the big boys, including some congressmen, government officials and attorneys and all that kind of stuff. And the place they had the meeting was on Jekyll Island, which is an island right off the coast of Georgia. And it was secretive. They were not allowed to bring their servants. They weren't allowed to bring anything like that. They had to camouflage themselves as someone else. One guy came as a hunter. He never hunted, but he brought all his hunting gear. And they had all these ploys on getting together. And I think, if I remember right, they spent about 2 weeks together. They planned and orchestrated the current monetary system that we have now. When you read it, it's a read that you realize it's the biggest scam on planet Earth. Right? The reason why John West says that Jekyll is his hometown.
Seriously?
That's what he said. Yeah. So here's what happens. They invent things like the Federal Reserve. It was intentionally named to sound like it's owned by the federal government. And they've gotten away with this for 75 or 100 years before somebody started revealing this stuff. The Federal Reserve is privately owned by individuals like Morgan Chase. Right? So what happens is the government is not allowed to have paper money.
Right.
So if you take out a dollar bill right now, let me do it for you. Let me get somebody out of here. Let me see here. So I don't know if you could see this, Peter, but
Yeah.
can you see this?
Yeah, I see it. It's a little hard to
Okay,
read.
right at the top up here, it says Federal Reserve Note.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, at the very top, this is a $20 bill.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to see because of my.
It gets a little blurry if you hold still, maybe it'll focus.
So it says Federal Reserve
Note.
Note.
Yep.
Okay, so every dominate or denomination, 20s, 50s, 100. It says on the top it's a Federal Reserve Note.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that means that it's backed by something.
Oh, really?
It's a note. What is a note? A note means that it's a promise to pay.
Yeah.
It's not real currency, it's a promise to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So they understood that they had to back these notes with confidence.
Yeah.
So they put in place the gold standard.
Right.
And the theory was that the amount of notes that were circulating in the country was backed up by gold. So supposedly you could take your $20 bill to the Federal Reserve and get $20 worth of gold.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever did it, but that was the theory.
No, but that's
Okay.
what they used to do in the old days when the blacksmith had the safe with some gold, some silver, some jewels. The guy didn't want to go buy a castle with, hey, give me some of my gold and my jewelry and my silver so I can buy the castle. Just write a note that it's here. You have it, it proves it, so just write on a piece of paper and he hands it to the lawyers or whoever. See, the money's in the safe over there, and I got it, so give me the castle. So it was a note saying that he had actual whatever. So we have the same thing now. But, gee, Bill, what's this note backed by?
So I think it was October 1979, President Nixon took the gold standard away.
Yeah, it was him.
So what happens is nowadays our currency, in other words, our dollars, which by the way, our dollars are called fiat money. Mm-hmm. Like the car, F-I-A-T, fiat money, right?
Yeah.
Fiat money means that the law says that's the only money you can use. You can't use other money. There's one kind of money and this is it. So back in the early 1900s, that was one of the things that these bankers did, is they got the legislators to pass these laws that we have fiat money and that we can have this, this Federal Reserve, and they set up the whole system and they proposed it in Congress. It took them 2 or 3 years to do it, but it all got passed. Now here's how it works. The federal government, and here's the reason why. All right, you're going to be blown away by this, and I'm going to bring this into summation here in a couple minutes. When you know the backstory, and then we start talking about what's going to happen with this stimulus money, you're going to be like, "Oh my God, it's a scary thought."
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what happened. So in the early stages, the way it worked, or it still works, is the Federal Reserve the government would call up the Federal Reserve and say, hey, can you print me $1 million? And they would write a note for the $1 million, an IOU for the $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yep.
So I get that. Okay, cool. All right, so the first question that enters a mind like mine is, how do you distribute that $1 million?
Mm.
Right? So here's the magic. And here's the very covert scam about the whole thing. The $1 million goes to the government and they spend it any way they want. So these guys that are in this meeting are like, well, we'll never get that passed because the people won't want that. they won't want us just spending the money and they don't have any. That's not like the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we going to do this? I know. We'll have taxes. So what we'll do is we'll divert the people with taxes, and we'll tell them they have to pay taxes on the money, and that's how the government runs, is with the taxes. The taxes had nothing to do. It was a diversion. Okay? So, which, by the way, I want to put another 2 cents in here, okay? When they did this, and they passed this like in the early 20s, that all of a sudden there was income tax.
Yeah.
All the millionaires suffered with that, and they started to they had to start paying income taxes. And there is the reason for the Depression in 1930. Was the income? It was because of this monetary adjustment in the economy, and they had to start paying taxes, and there wasn't enough money to do it. They weren't printing enough money, and there was a rush to the bank saying, I want my money, and they didn't have it. Okay?
Yeah, because there was no income tax. And we've seen those mansions in Rhode Island of all those millionaire guys. It was unbelievable. They would make a ton of money, not have to pay taxes, and just buy all kinds of crazy stuff. Mansions.
You're talking about Newport, yeah.
Yeah, in
Newport,
Rhode Island. And, but then all of a sudden the taxes, they had their lifestyle built up in such a way, then they couldn't do it.
And they lost the mansions. They lost the mansions.
They couldn't do
a lot of them just abandoned them.
Yeah.
Right? So you're talking about the railroad tycoons and the oil tycoons and all that stuff.
Yeah, guys who made tons of money working but keeping all of it. By the way, hey Bill, what did the government support itself on before taxes and all this stuff? Wasn't it tariffs?
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that from school, tariffs.
Yeah.
Tariffs. You want to sell stuff in our country? Yeah, you got to pay a little bit. It's an entrance fee.
Right.
And it worked for 100 some years.
So if anybody doesn't know it, a tariff is like a toll. Mm-hmm. If you want to pass through, you got to pay, right?
Yeah, you want to sell your stuff here, you got to pay.
Right. So here we are, right? The government calls up and says, send me $1 million. They send them $1 million. They put it in their bank account, and they spend it any way they want. Oh, yeah, by the way, now they got all the tax money. So what did this do? And this is my opinion, and I'm being very overt here. We created our country's elitists, and they're still in the Congress, and they're still in those positions. This is why they are above the law, because money is not an issue for these people. They just print more.
But the part that I like best is when they wreck things and we need to fix it, they print more money.
They throw money at it. They don't solve the problem. They throw money at it.
No, God forbid. If a politician solves a problem, there's no reason to elect him again.
Right.
You have to keep promising that you'll fix the problem and make excuses and give me another shot at it. I'll get it for you. I'm your friend. Ha ha.
Okay. So with that said, because I don't want to turn it into a political thing, sorry. So here's what happens now. Now watch this, okay? Obviously, they're printing a lot of money and they can't spend it, right? Because there's just not, I mean, you print $1.9 trillion. How do you spend it? Okay? So here's what they did. They created things like FHA, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae. These funds that's printed money that they would lend the money. Okay? And remind me to come back to the college loans because I don't want to forget that. But here's what happens. So the government's got all these millions of dollars it needs to get into the community, right? Mm-hmm. So how does it do that? Well, it gets banks to lend the money for them. Okay? You with me?
Yeah.
So they have to distribute the money, but the federal government doesn't want to manage all this. So they go to the banker and they tell them this. Here's how it works. We know that you got a 10-to-1 ratio. In other words, you can lend up to 10% of your deposits.
Well, isn't it 10 times their deposits?
10 times their deposit. That's what I meant to say.
Yes,
Yeah,
because people don't ask for all the money. So you
Right.
can lend 10 times what's there because they only ask a tenth of what you lend. So it's still, they got money to cover it.
Thank you for correcting that because I had it backwards. So here's what happens. You get a $100,000 mortgage, and I don't know about nowadays because it's electronic, but most mortgage documents they call it page 38 because most mortgage documents are 37 pages, or the closing documents are 37 pages.
Right.
The banker adds an addendum to the loan documents and sends them to the government. And that $100,000 loan, they get a deposit of $1 million from this pool, so they can now go lend $10 million. So our money is backed by debt, because when President Nixon took the money off the gold standard, they backed the money with what they call T-bills.
Treasury?
A T-bill, a Treasury bill, is mortgages. So our money's backed by debt.
No, wait a minute.
It's backed by mortgages.
Wait a minute. They're printing the money. They're giving it to the government. The government is giving it to the bank. The bank gives it to us. But we're paying the fees and interest on the money that they all got for free.
Which is why when I talk to people in the real estate business, they're like, oh, I'm going to go bid on this foreclosure because the bank is not in the real estate business. They're actually in the money business.
Yeah.
No, when they made the loan, the government gave them back their money in 10 times that amount.
Yeah, so we don't have to feel sorry for the bank is out all that money for these foreclosures.
So this is the reason why the foreclosures sit on the market sometimes for a year or two, because the bank, it's just found money for them. So when I hear we got all these foreclosures coming because of COVID, and all these foreclosures coming because people can't pay their money, it's hogwash. The only reason why the banker even cares is he doesn't want to break his 10-to-1 ratio. He doesn't want to have, because he can only loan up to 90%. So if his portfolio, if he ends up with too many foreclosures, it'll ruin his portfolio and he'll lose his 90% lending ratio. So that's the only reason why. So all they do is they get a rush of houses, they put them on the MLS, and they cash them all in for, they don't care how much. I mean, they fight for every dollar like they think they're owed the money.
Well, they got to keep up a good front. Oh, poor us.
Well, here's the thing: is the people that are doing it don't even know this. They're in only the elitists know this.
Yeah, I mean,
they don't even know they're doing it. They actually believe like the rest of America.
Right, like the guy at the desk at the bank trying to do his job and trying to protect his bank and, help everybody and be the good guy and, yeah, they don't read the book. They don't know.
No. So now, I want to go back to the money being deposited into the accounts of the government. Okay, the printed money. Okay, so now here's what happens. The biggest business the government is in, the largest business known to America, college loans.
Wow, that's scary.
That's the largest business, the largest profit center the government has, because they're non-recourse. You can't renege on them. You can't go into bankruptcy with them. You have to pay them.
It's true.
Right? Just like taxes, right? Now, here's what happens. The government says, some years ago, I'm going to say about 10 years ago, but I could be wrong on the time period. They say, in their effort to loan the money, because they need to get the money out of the coffers and into circulation, because they're printing this fake money and they need to get it circulating around, right? They say that they will pay up to $45,000 a year for a college education, whatever the number is.
Yep.
Some professor with a PhD degree, like they are, and a university says, if the government will give us up to $45,000 a year, why are our tuitions $15,000 and $18,000? So over the course of a couple of years, tuition got up to be the common now at $40,000 a year. You want to know where those numbers come from? They come from the guidelines of what the government will lend you or lend them to go to college. That's why college is up expensive, so expensive. It's in the name of circulating this money that was printed.
Right. If they'll let them charge that much, they will charge that much. Same thing happened in hospitals when they regulated like expenses. They said, look, you can only charge $200 for an aspirin, no more. Because we'll charge $200 then. Right. So when they limit it so high, they go up to that high limit, and now everything gets expensive. So much for regulation.
You got it.
That's wrong regulation. Maybe there's a right way, but that sure didn't work.
So let's go back to the housing industry. So suppose, just let your imagination roam, and this is just a billism or a theory. I have no idea. I've never heard anybody say this. It's just something I manufacture in my head as if it was my problem. Suppose this pandemic with this pent-up market and these moratoriums, which means that they're protecting people from that are not paying from getting evicted and going to court and having repercussions of not paying because the coronavirus, handicapped them from having to work or hitting their full potential so they could pay their bills.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now, what if, now the bank doesn't need this money. They already got their money. Remember I told you that. Mm-hmm. They got their money in the beginning.
Tenfold.
So this is just what, so what does the bank need? What does the bank want? I told you in the beginning. They need to service the loan and collect their interest.
Yeah.
That's how they make their profits. That's what builds the biggest building in every city with a bank name on top is that.
Yeah.
Is the fees, and they need to develop the interest. Because if you don't borrow the money, you can't be charged the interest. You have to use the money before they can charge you for it. Mm-hmm. It's the banking laws, right?
Yeah, okay. You'd be surprised how much they push the tellers in banks to sell loans and mortgages. Two of my family members worked in banks. They push them to sell mortgages and sell loans. The guy at the counter, not the guy at the desk. Everybody. That's how important that is to them.
And that's their statistic on whether they keep their job or not.
Yeah.
Because I know a few bankers because they have to turn in so many leads of people that are interested a week, a month, a year, or whatever. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
you think you got a teller job. You're a loan guy. So I know people who quit. Like, look, I didn't hire on for this, and they quit. Like, get out of here. Right. You know what they want to do. Okay.
So suppose we had this big foreclosure rush that we're talking about. Okay. Yeah. Which I don't know how anybody could know that, because the only way you can know the statistics of foreclosure is if they were filed in a court, because the definition of foreclosure is you have not paid your bill and we're going after the collateral for the loan, which is the house. So we have to take you to court and sue you to get the collateral back. Right. That's the definition of foreclosure.
Right.
So unless there is a lawsuit or a lawsuit pending or one filed, you don't know how many foreclosures there are. So how are all of these talking heads and pundits talking about foreclosure when the courts were closed? How would they know that? And so the argument there is, well, the banks know how many people are late. Yeah. Okay, so let's go down that little rabbit hole for a minute, and then I'm gonna wrap all this up, and we're gonna talk about something very interesting. Okay?
Sure.
How am I doing? Okay? I'm not rambling on or doing something stupid here, am I?
Well, you're talking about stuff that happens to us every day under our nose, like talking about air when you don't know that there's air. It's happening, and we just don't think about it.
Right. Okay, so what if this foreclosure pandemic, we'll call it, comes along? Is it possible that the banks, instead of taking all these properties back, because it's a nationwide thing, this is not like some, Bill didn't pay his mortgage, so we're going to pounce on him because we have all the law on our side. We don't need the money, but it's just what's right.
Yeah.
Okay? No, there's thousands, maybe millions of people like me. So wouldn't it make sense the guy with the gold makes the rules would say, hey, let's not do foreclosure. Let's start doing some modifications, which means you take the debt without changing the loan criteria. You take the money that's owed and you put it to the back of the mortgage. So if you have a 25-year mortgage and you haven't been, 25 years left on your mortgage and you haven't been paying your mortgage for a year, you now can put it on the back of the mortgage and now you have a 26-year mortgage. Wouldn't it make sense that the bank would want that, because that's how they make their money? They make their money on servicing the loan, and on the fees, and on the interest. So now what they're going to do is they're going to whack up all the fees, all the late charges.
Oh, even better.
All the fees, right?
Yeah, even better.
Okay.
Yeah, more fees.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I got distracted by Desiree, because she says that's what they're doing with my car payment. So here's the point that I'm making is that, yes, it's even better because it goes now, instead of owing the bank for 25 years, you owe the bank for 26 years. Now, you may not know this, and I can't give you the source of where I read this, but I read this some years ago, that the bank's intention, because about 35% of this country is free and clear, means they own real estate without mortgages. Mm-hmm. And the top dogs in banks are after, they're like a hunting dog after that equity. Mm. They want everybody to owe them money, because what's the biggest way to become wealthy is to have a lot of people owe you money and paying you every month. Mm-hmm. Yep. So they're after that equity, right?
Yeah.
So wouldn't it make sense that instead of going to look for new business, they could dampen that by rehashing old business? So what they could do is, all these people that are delinquent, they can charge them the fees and the penalties, and then charge them a fee for doing the modification. We'll say $1,500, right? Boy. And then they put it on the back of the loan, and they extend all their loans by a year or two or whatever. That's a huge profit center for them. It's making money in chaos. So are we really going to have foreclosures? I don't know. I think with so much demand, the banks are, and I'm not saying they're going to come up with what I'm saying, but what I am talking about is that they will come up with something that they'll make money off of it. Mm. Instead of the foreclosures. So is there really going to be a foreclosure pandemic? I don't know. We keep talking about it. Now let's talk about this. Let's talk about how the market right now is hot as hell. I mean, I did my meetup last night, right? And I had I had something happen last night that I haven't really thought about it, because I've just been going balls to the wall since the beginning of the week. And once I get done with recording this podcast, I have to catch my tail, and I have a few things I need to do. I mean, for example, I got some big checks on my desk over here for my closing, and I haven't even gone to the bank to put them in. Okay, so it's just, that's been kind of the thing. But check this out. I'm proud of myself, and I'm gonna be arrogant, and I'm gonna brag about us, you and I.
Yeah.
In the meetup last night, I obviously had guys and girls from all over the country, the United States. Mm-hmm. I also had a crew of people from Israel. And I also had people on there from Australia.
Australia.
I just signed up a coaching client from Australia.
That's crazy.
So I guess you can say the meetup has become worldwide, huh?
It's international. It's planetary.
So yeah, it's planetary. So the reason why I bring that up is because one of those people on the meetup last night was talking about how Canada is so hot they can't buy any property. Everything goes on the market, they sell for $20,000 over market value. Mm. And that's all you hear right now, which, by the way, that card has been played. Much like stocks, like when you hear about there's a good stock, the money's already been made, because the big boys were there a week before you. Okay? Yeah. That's the way it is with real estate. So right now, everybody thinks real estate is really hot, right? When that really ended back in September, November, October. Okay. Now I'm not saying that there isn't situations where people are getting over their asking prices, but it's not every house. Back before, from like June till about October, it was almost every house.
Yep.
Now it's probably 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 or something like that. But it always takes the sellers 6 to 8 months to catch up to the market, because they're not on the front lines. They don't deal with people like we do every day. They don't hear the stories we hear. So it takes them 6 or 8 months, which is, by the way, a listing period, 6 months. It takes them that long to put their house on the market to actually figure out what's going to happen. Okay? Interesting, right?
Right.
Okay, so here's my prediction. The prediction is this. There's a pent-up market. Pent-up means there are people that wanted to sell or would like to sell or have a desire to sell or are uncomfortable and would prefer to sell, but didn't sell because of the pandemic. First of all, they didn't want people in their house. That's common sense. Mm-hmm. Second of all, I will tell you from and I could do another whole podcast just on this, but I won't. Trying to get my closings done. I did a subject to deal 3.5 weeks ago. A subject to deal. That means that I have the house bought. I have the paperwork in a folder right here. Look, all signed. Look, I got all the paperwork signed. It's all right here.
Yeah.
I've got deeds. I've got everything signed.
Isn't it done then?
Nope.
Well,
I need to get a title search, and it's taken me 9 days to get a title search, and I haven't gotten a title search yet because the lawyer's too busy. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go to another lawyer. Well, the other guy told me the same thing. These guys are so busy with closings. And the reason why is because us humans have this really weird glitch. If somebody tells you you can't have it, your desire to want it goes really high. And that's where we are. So here's my prediction. So let's say in Wallingford, Connecticut, and I explained this to you the other day, let's say in Wallingford, Connecticut, there's normally 500 houses on the market.
okay.
And there's, we'll say, 300 buyers.
Right.
Right now, because people are not listing their houses because of the COVID thing, which is going to change, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, there's maybe 100 or 150 houses on the market. So now we have 300 people looking at 150 houses. The saturation point is not there. So there's not enough houses to satisfy the 300 buyers.
Right.
So that creates the bidding wars.
Sure.
Okay? But now everybody, it's public knowledge. You ask anybody about real estate, and they're like, oh, it's hot right now. You get over asking prices, and you hear the same story, because I hear it multiple times a day from my sellers telling me this.
Yeah.
But their house has been on the market for 5 months, and they haven't sold it. Okay? So here's the point that I'm making. The spring market, because of that, because the pandemic is like under control, supposedly deaths are going down, the cases are going down, the vaccine is out there. It's supposed to be in everybody's arm by June, May or June, right? So people are starting to relax. Not that the virus is over, not that it's done, but people are starting to relax with that. You go into restaurants, there's more people in restaurants. You go in grocery stores, there's more people in grocery stores. The threat is gone, or it's dwindling.
Yeah.
Okay? By the time we get to March, it'll be even less dwindle, because we're in February now, right? So here's the deal. That 150 houses is going to go, let's say, to 300 houses. So it will satisfy all of the buyers, the 300 buyers. But because there's a 6 to 8 month lag between what the buyers know and what the sellers know and what the market's actually doing, there's a lag there. They'll keep pouring houses on the market. So I would suspect by May and June or July, now instead of having 300 houses, there's going to be 500 or 600 houses. But there's still only 300 buyers.
So why wouldn't that change? Is that possible that it would change?
Why would... I don't
know.
understand the question.
Well, I understand that people tend to look more for houses in the spring. So could it get a little higher? Just curious.
Oh, so you're listening to your realtor person. So they're saying that there's going to be more buyers than 300.
Well, no, I've heard that.
But
and I don't know if that's why I'm asking.
They're not going to be 500 buyers.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it goes up, but what percentage, right? I mean, maybe that's a pent-up market too. Here's my point is at some point I expect, because the market's been pent up for almost a year.
Yep.
So you have a backlog of 1 year of people wanting to buy their houses. That's bigger than the amount of people that wanted to buy a house. I promise you that. So eventually, somewhere through the next quarter or two, what's going to happen is the buyers are going to outweigh the sellers. So that means right now when you go to buy a house, the seller's like, I'm not going to do that. I got 4 other people behind you, so I'm going to say no. And then in 6 months from now, it's going to be, I can't get any offers. I have no offers.
Yeah.
I better take the one that you give me because if not, the buyer will just move on, because it'll turn into, the buyer will say, Mr. Seller, I'm not putting up your crap. There's like 15 other houses in that neighborhood. I'll just go buy one of those. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It will switch quickly. Okay? So here's my in a long story here, a short story made long. Here's my prediction. It's not going to be the foreclosures that is going to change the market. I think the foreclosures will have some bearing to it, like maybe it goes from a foreclosure rate of 3% to 5% or 6%, but it's not going to be the lion's share of the housing market. The lion's share of the housing market is going to be the pent-up market in days on market. So if you want to keep your finger on a pulse, just pay attention to days on market. So if you go into your area, you're looking for a farm area to do business in, look at days on market. And a realtor can supply that with you, MLS. If you have PropStream, I think PropStream can do it because that's like the investors like MLS. Just go do your research on days on market, because days on market is going to tell you which type. I mean, you and I go through this like emerging markets. Like, where's there's emerging markets? Well, here's what I figured out after a year of, like, not even trying to figure it out, but of using that data. Here's how you figure out an emerging market. It's simple. Very, very simple. How many jobs are coming in or going out, and how many days on the market is the real estate? And that's an emerging market. Those 2 factors tell you a lot. Like, how many jobs are the jobs going up or are they going down? Because there's a whole bunch of theory behind that, like, governments attracting money or repelling money, and they're giving tax breaks or not giving tax breaks. The amount of jobs coming into an area or leaving an area, right, has a lot to do with everything.
Sure.
And the days on market has a lot to do with real estate. In other words, when somebody puts a house for sale, how many days does it take them to sell it? And if it's 30 days, it's a hot market.
Yep.
If it's 45 to 60 days, it's a warm market. If it's over 90 days, it's a cold market. Which, by the way, in a hot market, like it is now, it's very hard to buy, very easy to sell. In a cold market, it's very easy to sell. I'm sorry, very easy to buy, but hard to sell. It's opposite.
Yeah.
Right? So in a cold market, it's very hard to buy, easy to sell. I'm going to do that again. I always get this backwards. I should do this when I'm reading and not off of my memory. So in a hot market, it's hard to buy, easy to sell. In a cold market, it's easy to buy, hard to sell.
Yeah.
Okay? So days on market is that indicator. Right? That's what tells you what the days on market are. Right?
So jobs would come in, and then shortly thereafter, they would need more housing. So houses would sell more. And there can't be too much lag on there, can there? Because if you get a job in an area and you just moved here, you need to move into a house. You can't wait 3, 4, 5 months, or maybe you get an apartment. Right. Then are you familiar? You have any idea or feel for a lag between those 2 numbers?
I don't.
Yeah.
No, but Dave Lindahl, who's from Massachusetts, who's the apartment king, wrote a book called The Emerging Markets, which we did a podcast on that some time ago, right? The process that he talks about is what happens is when a city's depressed, the first thing they do is they put together a small board, like a committee, right? And they figure out how they can attract money guys to come in and start rehabbing property.
Yep.
They do that with tax breaks. They do that with grants. They give them money. They give them incentives.
Yep.
So they could make more money. The second thing that happens after that is once they start renovating or rejuvenating the property, right? The new word is gentrification, which is the same thing I'm talking about. That's the millennial way of saying it, right? So once they start improving the property, what happens now is the businesses are now attracted to that area because they know a business knows if they're going to have a big business there, people need to live. So now the city then has incentives, tax breaks, and all that kind of stuff to attract the businesses in there.
Yep.
And then that's the cycle, right? So now if you're paying attention to jobs on the market, you're actually taking that whole process into scope with one number, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about that for a second. Let's get back to the stimulus. So there's this nasty word in the English language that most don't like to talk about and don't know about because it's a nasty word. It's called inflation. Its nickname is the hidden tax.
Really?
The hidden tax. That's its nickname. Okay? So now pay attention to this. I'm going to give you the definition, my definition of inflation and deflation. Okay? So inflation means you have too much money, not enough products to sell. Too much money, not enough products to sell. Deflation, which is the opposite, means you have too many products, not enough money. So on deflation, money has more value. On inflation, money has less value. There's the story of in Germany where they used to have to bring a wheelbarrow of money back in the 40s to buy a loaf of bread because the money was useless.
Yeah, same thing like with Confederate money in our country, things like that. It just winds up being paper, just about.
So I had news for you, Peter.
Yes, sir.
In my simple world over here. But the United States' currency has a lot to do with the world currency. What our money is worth, the value of our money means something to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Yep.
Okay? The biggest thing it's bounced up against is the UK with their pounds and the Chinese with their yen. Those are the big markets. Okay?
Yeah.
So people buy and sell these rights or these currencies every day on the stock market. Okay? So my point is this. If you have a country that printed out $900 billion, we'll say $1 trillion, and then 3 months later prints out $2 trillion, so they print out, we'll say, $3 trillion, and then they tell all the workers to stay home and don't produce and don't make products, what do you think is going to happen? The definition of
not enough product.
Definition.
Yeah, Jesus.
So what's going to happen? The dollar, instead of needing $100,000 to buy a house, we're going to need $200,000 to buy a house. Same house. But we have so much money that the inflation is going to take over.
Yeah.
The inspector, instead of being $400, is going to be $800. The realtor, instead of getting 5% commission, is going to get 10% commission.
Well, even his 5% commission will get him more money. The house is worth more. Come on. Bill, can I raise my music lesson rates?
Sure.
Okay.
But do you see what I'm saying about the stimulus package?
Well, you know what the problem with this stuff is? Okay, give people $15 an hour. But what's that going to do? What's going to happen then as it works through the whole system of paying things, buying things? And then what happens if you dump a bunch of money in the economy? What does it do? In the long run, it's not just tax the rich people. Well, what if they don't feel like working anymore? You know, the Beatles lived in England, 90% tax. They wrote a song about it. They moved to America. You know, they'll leave. You know, you have to look at the entire story. What ramifications do these things have? Also, don't worry about it. Deflation won't do anything. Well, then what? Can you unprint money, Bill?
No.
I don't think so.
Desiree. So, I smoke cigars. There's no secret about that. Bucky Jones, number 34 of the Patriots. He won a Super Bowl. I'm not, just so you know who he is, he's a big dude. He owns a cigar shop. I'm with him multiple days a week. He's a friend of mine. Good guy. But he's boisterous. He has his opinions. Okay? And he didn't vote for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows you how some of the conversations might go.
Yep.
So he's this big dude, and I'm sitting down, and he's hovering over me with his finger kind of like in my face, saying to me, you know what? And he's got a deep voice, and he's saying to me, you know what? What is the difference if Biden wins or if Trump wins? It's not going to change your life. How do you think it's going to change your life? Because it won't change mine. Yeah. And I put my fingers up in a cross position. And I said,
Time out?
Time out, brother. Time out. Here's what I said to him. I heard President-elect Biden, instead of President Biden now, here's what I heard him say behind the microphone 3 times. I want to change the capital gains tax rate to 45%. Right now it's like 18%, 16 or 18%. So that means if I do a rehab and I make 30 grand, right?
Yeah.
That means 14,000 of that money goes to the government. I get nothing for it. I made 16 grand, not 30 grand.
Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute. On the heel of that, he says, I would also like to remove the 1031 exchange. So 1031 is an IRS form number. Mm-hmm. And what that means is it's the form you use. So if I make $30,000 as a profit on this piece of property, I can move it to another like kind of property and move the tax ramifications to that property and not pay the taxes now. Yeah. I'll pay for it later, but the idea is later on you'll be older and you'll be at a lower tax bracket and you won't pay as much. So a 1031 exchange means you're moving the profit from one house to another house and kicking the taxes down the road, kicking the tax can down the road.
Right, but you can buy a bigger, better property that makes more money, on which you would owe more taxes on the long run and be making more business and more housing more people and doing more of whatever.
So let's be specific, because we were doing this deal and the deal kind of fell apart at this point because I blew it up. So we have a 3-family house. Mm-hmm. We're selling that 3-family house. I think we're making like $70,000 or $75,000. We'll say $75,000.
Yep.
Right? We normally would make $75,000 and have to give $20,000 or $25,000 of that money away to taxes. Mm-hmm. So we'll say $25,000. We have $50,000 left.
Yep.
If we do a 1031 exchange, we're purchasing a 6-family house, which is bigger. The 3-family made about $800 or $900 a month. The 6-family makes about $2,000 a month. Mm. It's the same money, just in a different place. Mm-hmm. We take the whole $75,000 because we don't have to pay the tax on it and use it as a deposit or down payment money for the 6-family.
Yep.
Right? And we don't have to pay the $25,000 taxes until we sell the 6-family.
Yep.
Or do another 1031 exchange.
Yeah.
Right? And the object is you keep building, kind of like Monopoly. You buy the property, then you buy houses, and then you buy hotels. Right? That's kind of like what it's like.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens if you take the 1031 exchange away and raise the capital gains tax to 45%? Let me give you my prediction. The guys that own real estate freeze. They don't sell, they don't buy. Why should they buy when they're getting penalized for selling?
Yeah.
Let me do that again. Why should they sell if they're going to get penalized for selling? It'll freeze the real estate market. It will make it so the big money, which, by the way, just in case you're curious, my opinion about the stock market, this is all just Bill Planet thinking, okay? You don't have to go along with any of this. Why is the stock market so high right now? It's so simple to me, it's pathetic. It's like I want to slap people like my father-in-law that think that it's like because commerce is up. No. Here's what happens. The big money guys, the guys that buy these big multifamily houses and shopping centers and the big money guys that have portfolios with a lot of property in them, they're selling left, right, and center at the peak of the market. This peak has not been this big, I think, in 20 or 30 years.
That's right.
So people are making, so one thing that I do know is I'm on the phone every single day with sellers. And one thing that I hear almost 90% of the time, if not more, is, what's your offer? I get like 5 phone calls a day trying to sell this property. Right?
Yeah.
So you think that's not happened to their big guys, that they're not getting a bunch of offers? So here's what happens. They sell the property for top dollar. They know it's top dollar because they know what they have into it. They're like laughing, thinking, I can't believe somebody's going to pay that. How are they going to make money? I don't care. I can't believe they're going to pay that.
Yep.
Okay, now they close. What happens at the closing? The name on the deed changes from their name to somebody else's name, and they get a chunk of dough. So what are they going to do with the dough? Now, we're talking sometimes millions and millions of dollars, right? In some of these big transactions.
Sure.
You think they're going to go out and buy another piece of property at the peak of the market? No. They're going to take that money and put it in the stock market and let it earn its way through this little bit of a peak. And then when the market goes, when the real estate market goes down again and property gets to be reasonable, they got this chunk of dough and they can sweep in and buy all these properties for pennies on the dollar. How clever is that? That's a money guy. That's what happens with money people.
Well, that was part of our decision on not moving forward on the 6th family, because it is at the peak of a market. It says, well, let's just hold on to the money and buy something in a month or 2 or 3 when the prices should come down. Get a better deal. Even we're doing
or
that.
at least or at least let us look around and see if we can find something.
Yeah.
All right. So the last thing I want to cover before we end off here is a strategy that I am doing that we haven't talked about much, and I'm just going to be loose lips about it because this is what we're doing. And I hope this podcast was okay because it was 100% improv and all ad hoc. There was no thought behind this at all. It's just me and you talking, or you and I talking. Okay? So here's the deal. What do you do if you have a pent-up market that's not putting houses on the market, that's creating a starvation of leads? What do you do? How do you find property to buy? What do you do? This provoking question has been eating at me like the worst cancer ever known to mankind. It just keeps replaying. You know how you get a song stuck in your head?
Yeah.
And it just keeps going and going. Well, this has been happening to me for a while. Like, what do you do, Bill? What are you going to do, Bill? What are you going to do? And you know how I get answers to these questions? As I go do something other than real estate and I relax and I just don't think about it. And suddenly something from the environment, from a gift shop or, from a movie or a book I see in a doctor's table or a barber shop will all of a sudden hit me like a lead balloon. So here's my answer to that question. You don't go buy on-market houses. You crank up your off-market business. You need to figure out, Bill, ways to get the sellers that might want to sell that haven't put their house on the market because of the pandemic. But they want to sell, they just don't know how. So I need to introduce myself to those off-market potential sellers and say, oh, by the way, you don't have to put your house on the market. You don't have to show it to a bunch of people and worry about the pandemic. And I'll pay you more money than they will pay you anyways because they're going to charge you between 12 and 15% closing costs, and I won't do any of that. And what do you think happens? You find deals. So when I hear somebody say, there's no leads to find, there's no leads in my area, I can't find any leads, I'm talking to a lazy person that is not trying to get off-market deals and not being clever. They're just I'm going to divert for a second. This happens. This is happening right now, Peter, as we speak. I have met so many people that either want to do real estate or do real estate or have done real estate that are very successful.
Yeah.
I've met all walks of life with real estate. I think you know that.
Sure.
Okay, you've been with me when we've done this.
Yeah, some top dogs.
And one of the comments that I make to you is, especially like with contractors and stuff like that, is they're riding the wave. They think that they have this inherent talent, that they're a really good real estate agent because they're selling a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What they don't realize is that they're on the wave. The market's good feeding them deals. It's not them, it's the market. They happen to be in the right place at the right time.
Lucky them.
And I feel right now in the last year, any realtor that I know is on their high horse because they think this is the way it's going to stay for a very long time. They think it's endless. They think their system is spectacular because they're doing a lot of deals. What they don't realize is that this is the calm before the storm. It's going to change. It can't stay this way forever. Because all the decisions that our government is making right now on this money and on these stimulus packages, and oh yeah, let's not even get into the conversation about how many people I know that I've asked this question to is, are you going to go back to work? In other words, they're working from home. Are they going to actually? The question is, are you going to go back to the office? And they're all like, I don't want to. I'm going to try not to. I do all my work. As a matter of fact, I do more work from home. So it seems we're more productive working from home than we are when we're in the office. So that opens up a whole nother can of worms with what's going to happen to all that real estate.
Yep.
What's going to happen to all those office buildings? What's going to happen to the malls? What's going to happen to the movie theaters? We went to the movies the other night. There was me, you, your wife, and 2 other people in a movie theater. What's going to happen to the movie theaters? Yeah. There was one person selling popcorn and tickets in the entire theater working. One person. And how many cinemas was it? 10? 12?
Yeah, a full complex. And the one girl cleaning. It's all it took. Yeah. I was at a restaurant yesterday. I asked how they were doing. She says, we're having a good day today. There are 3 tables full.
Yeah. So what happens with all of that? What happens to that real estate?
So what would happen if we turned those big office buildings into condos downstairs and offices upstairs?
My point is that we are in the middle of an innovation stage and we don't know it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, with all these things we talked about today is the only reason why I stand at the top of the church's steeple and yell, the next 18 months is the best time ever to get in real estate because it's the perfect storm of all the things we talked about today. And it starts with the stimulus package, a $1.9 trillion influx of printed money that will say 2021 on its bills. Year 2021 printed on its bills. And not long later will the tax, the hidden tax come. Now, excuse me for being political, but the way I see it is the Democrats believe that the government, that you need a government to live your life. Do you agree with that?
They want you to think that.
Okay, so what better way to make the populace believe that you need a government than to give them money? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know the full thing, but I will tell you this is my observation, the political scene right now, because we're in February of 2021. Here's the political scene I see. They tried to impeach Donald Trump again. How long did that take?
It's like
Took a while, right?
Well, I mean, the activity was for just a few days, but they've been going at it for quite a while.
Okay. So what's that a diversion of? Why are they doing that? Because it's a diversion of something. Peter, in your history,
Which is pretty long, right?
it's decades. So in your history, how many presidents have you seen elected? And the big to-do after the inauguration is the first 100 days. Why are we not talking about President Biden's first 100 days? What he's going to do in his first 100 days. It sets the pace for his presidency. Why are we not talking about that? What is it that they're hiding that they don't want us to know? Why are they not talking about the first 100 days of this president? Where's that talk?
Yep.
It's covered up by impeachment. And now they're going to go into stimulus negotiation. So what is it that they're putting this smoke and mirrors show up for us Americans to put our attention on that they're doing behind the scenes? That's what I'd like to know. To make it so that now think of this. If you have a person that's on the right, conservative, right? And you got a person that's on the left that's completely not conservative, liberal, okay? And you force some sort of a pandemic, and I'm not saying they forced it, but I'm not saying that I don't know that they didn't, but they force an illness on you by faking numbers like deaths, because I know 3 people that were in hospital and died from car accident, motorcycle accident, or heart attack that are people that I know or know of, and their birth certificate says they died of COVID.
The death.
So there's 3.
The death certificate.
What did I say? Birth certificate?
Birth.
Yeah, no, death. Yeah,
The other end. The other end.
Yeah, the other end. Yeah,
The other end.
The exit, not the entry.
Yeah, and I know one of those too.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, COVID.
So all I'm saying is that how do I know those 200 or 400,000 numbers that they're spewing are actually real? Not to mention, how many people actually die every year because of the flu? Is it a much different of a number?
Bill, this year nobody died of the flu. It was all COVID. There was no flu deaths at all, right?
Yeah.
I didn't see any.
So I'm not like trying to be mean about this or anything. It's just kind of coincidental. Right? It's all in the name of, so now you got this conservative that is all the way on the right and completely like Republican or conservative. And all of a sudden you take his job away and you take his money away and you don't let him work. What's going to happen to that person when he needs to take money from the government? He's going to go from the right all the way to the right and start moving to the left a little bit and starting to depend on the government, right? And he's going to start to say, maybe this isn't so bad. They helped me.
Yep.
I would have never made it through if they didn't give me the money. They gave me unemployment, $600. They gave me a stimulus if it wasn't for that. And all of a sudden, the guy that was hard right is no longer hard right, and he's got some confusing thoughts.
That's right.
It's kind of like, really like when you just observe it for what it is and not be stuck in it, it's kind of like, wow. Now, again, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, because if you want me to be that, I got a few ideas about that. Not that I am one, but I definitely got some ideas about that. The point is this. We are definitely in times of change. Innovation is at its peak. And real estate is a huge part of that. Now, Grant Cardone said on a Bigger Pockets podcast I heard once. I don't listen to him much, but somehow I listened to this one. He was yelling at Brad Turner saying, "You guys don't know what you're talking about." You know how Grant is. Right?
Yeah.
He said this. You have to buy recession-proof property. Turner said to him, "What is that, Grant?" He said, anything you can rent for between $800 and $1,200 a month, because everybody seems to have that, is recession-proof. So you and I changed our model because we weren't doing apartments, we weren't doing rentals, we were just buying and selling and flipping. And I decided over a year ago at this point, a year and a half ago at this point, that no, we need to be collecting rents because of Grant Cardone. That triggered me. I thought about that for a week. I'm like, holy shit, he's right. So The other thing that he said was, what about these millennials? And he's yelling and screaming. You know how Grant is. What about these millennials? He said, real estate is over. Real estate is played. Real estate is done. This is Grant Cardone talking.
Yeah.
Go listen to it. Go to Bigger Pockets and listen to it.
Yeah.
Right? He said, because millennials don't want to own things. They're not like our mommy and daddies. They're not baby boomers. They weren't not brought up like us, the American dream, have a house and a white picket fence. They're not that way. They don't want to own things.
No, it's too much responsibility. Too much responsibility.
So you take all this stuff we're talking about today, the stimulus, the inflation, the government, right? The fact that people aren't working, what's going to happen to the real estate? So what we've been teaching, and you know because you guys are here listening, is the rent-to-own method, the sandwich lease option transfer, the lease option, subject to, which is a little bit different. All these type of transactions are risk-free. These type of transactions, when and if things change, won't squash you like a bug. This is why I'm doing it. You don't have to agree with me, but this is why I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. Real estate has changed. Real estate has changed and is going to change. Just like technology has changed, just like your telephone, the way you listen to the way you listen to music, the way you watch TV. Look what Apple did to your life. They took the telephone off the kitchen wall. They took the radio out of the bedroom, right? Now they're taking the TV out of the living room.
And
right?
your computer.
And your computer.
And they put it in your
off
pocket.
Your desk.
In your
off
pocket.
Your desk. Right?
Yeah.
Let's think about this as a parting word. In 2020, right? Yeah, that's right, Desiree. Look what Netflix did to Blockbuster. So in 1920, right? Mm-hmm. In 1920, what did the automobile industry look like?
Were they still all black?
Yeah.
All like phones were all black, cars were all black, and
it was a wild west. There was hundreds of car manufacturers, manufacturers, right? Everybody started their own car company. They're going to be the newest car company. Innovation was just rampant. There was no standardization. It was just make a car. And we thought as human beings how innovative and how smart and how advanced we were as a population. Look at us walking around with our thumbs under our armpits. Aren't we just hot shit? Okay?
Yeah.
Now look at it 100 years later. Look at the cars now. What did technology and innovation do to those cars? How far has it come? Could you imagine telling a guy in 1920 that there's actually the ability to put heat and air conditioning? They didn't even know what air conditioning was in a car. Imagine hydraulic brakes, ABS brakes, fuel injection, all of that stuff. Cars went 200, 300, 400,000 miles an hour. They drove at 120 miles an hour on the highway without even thinking about it. Those guys would have laughed at you. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, not to mention satellites guiding you in your directions on a screen on the dashboard. That's nuts.
Right? Okay, so I invite you to look at this next thought. The internet right now in 2020 is what the car business was like in 1920. We think how innovative we are. We think how cool we are. We got our thumbs under our armpits walking around thinking technology. We're the smartest population. Look how far we have advanced. All the same things the car guys did in 1920, we're doing in 2020 with the internet. And we have no idea what is ahead of us and what's going to happen. I mean, I see ads for buying a shirt where I could take a picture of myself and they send me a custom made shirt for like $70. Okay?
Yep.
Look what Amazon has done. Okay? I am making a prediction right now that with all this technology, real estate will soon change the same way. Real estate has been on this path since 1950, which is 70 years, and it's archaic. The way we do real estate is archaic. It's time for a change. I am in the middle of doing research and think, I'm in Connecticut, I think I'm going to go. I was trying to do Georgia and I was trying to do Florida. I've done a complete study, days worth of studies, which is not like, all day, but a few hours here, a few hours there. I'm pretty convinced, I need to talk to Sean, one of my guys, that I'm going to go to Dayton, Ohio. Because of statistics. Because of what I want, not because of just because of what I want. Right?
Yep.
I'm going to buy them virtually. Desiree just made a profound statement that I don't want to talk about because it's the end of the show. We don't need realtors.
It's like
So
you
let's
don't.
talk about
It's like you don't need
that-
salespeople.
Desiree, let's talk about that for a quick second as we end the show here. Okay? What did Uber do to the taxis?
Ooh.
What did Airbnb do to the hotel business? What did Amazon do to Walmart? So Desiree, that's why I think your statement is profound. What will us investors do? Oh, that was John. I'm sorry, it wasn't Desiree. I'm sorry, that was John. John, thanks. Sorry, I thought it was Desiree. What will investors do if they're organized, which I would like to be part of, to realtors? I just did a closing. 4 days of the checks that I have on my desk, it's been 5 days now. I did the closing, right? It's done. I got the checks on my desk, which I got to go take care of today. 5 days later. Okay. I paid $12,000 to my realtors. And the day after the closing, I had to send one of my guys to the buyer, and give them the keys and the garage door opener. I paid $12,000. Why would I put up with that? Because it's easier for me to send my guy to go give the guy the keys than to fight with my realtor. Oh yeah, by the way, the buyer's realtor was on vacation and my realtor had to do the walkthrough. And threw me under the bus with they supposedly found mold, which wasn't mold, it was mildew, which is a difference. And I had to send my guy up there to fix it after the closing. I didn't have to, it's just that's the way I am. I could have just said to the guy, screw you, but I didn't. It's changing. So I know that we started off with stimulus, but this is how we got here. I'm going to end the show. I really appreciate everybody listening to my opinions, because that's what they are. And hopefully I've enlightened you enough that you need to get out of the ether. Pay attention to what's going on around you and realize the next 18 months is going to be the best time in history since the 30s minimally, 1930s minimally, to get in the business. If the pandemic that happened in 1918 happened in 2019 or 2020, it kind of looks cyclical, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you notice that our events are cyclical? In other words, there's a cycle to them. Is it fair to say that they're cyclical? Like the pandemic was one of them. Because we had a pandemic in 2018 or 19. This time we had it in 2020. Right?
Yeah, 1918.
Yeah.
The last one, yeah. 1918, then 100 years later.
Yeah. Okay, good. So with that theory, is it possible that we're in the roaring 20s?
That'd be fun.
If you're going to think, you might as well think that way.
Yeah.
Don't think of the bad shit. Look at in the roaring 20s. Is it possible we're going to live the roaring 20s again?
They were roaring.
And are you ready? Are you trained? Have you done some of your training? Are you able to do creative real estate investing? Are you willing to do some of the things that we talk about on this podcast all the time? And if you're not, you will not have the rights to complain later on. To end off, I realized that we didn't do any of our housekeeping stuff, so I'll do that right now. You can find us at Facebook or YouTube. Just type in Flipping Houses for Rookies. We record this event every single Thursday morning, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. So you can go on to YouTube or Facebook. That's where these guys are sending in their comments. I got a big screen in front of me, and you can ask your questions or tell me what you think, and that's how we do it. Also, if you look in your description, there's a link there that will get you to our free stuff page. There's 25 or 26 documents on there. There's scripts and explanations of leases and things you can give your sellers and videos, and there's a whole bunch of free stuff on there. Last night when I was explaining on the meetup, I realized if I was a new person, they would think I'm nuts. Why do I give away all this free stuff? Why do I do the free podcast? And I'm going to answer that in one word, because I've been getting a lot of that lately. I've been getting that in support tickets, like, why do you do this? I've been asked that question 3 or 4 times in the last week alone. Mm-hmm. I'm going to answer that question right now. You ready?
Yep.
Karma. That's it. I make a lion's share of my money doing deals and talking to people. So the more people I can talk to and the more people know that we do. And at the end of the day, I would like to be known as the guy that started the Creative Real Estate Investment Club and organized all of us so we could become like the realtors. Mm. And with that thought, we're over and out. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.